think about the last time you asked for a raise, or maybe even just asked a friend for a really major favor,
Oh, yeah.
or like pitched an investor, or even just asked for a little bit of flexibility on a deadline. Chances are your heart rate spiked.
Definitely.
Your palms probably started to sweat a little bit. You probably spent 20 minutes drafting and redrafting this basic 3-sentence email.
Deleting words, softening the tone.
Exactly. Pacing around the room. And it makes you wonder, why does a simple question, just the visible movement of air through your vocal cords or typing some keys on a keyboard trigger, the exact same biological response in your nervous system as being chased by a predator?
It's wild. You're basically handing over the remote control to your own nervous system.
Right.
You're giving someone else the button that literally dictates your cortisol levels.
Okay.
And, Seneca and the broader Stoic school of philosophy, they actually had the answer to this physiological mystery like 2,000 years ago.
Which is just crazy to think about.
It is. It is a remarkable biological and, well, psychological paradox. I mean, we think of ourselves as these rational, highly evolved creatures.
Sure.
Yet the mere prospect of asking for assistance reduces us to this state of existential threat.
A complete puddle.
Yeah, exactly. But the suffering you experience in those moments, that tight knot in your stomach, it doesn't actually come from the act of asking itself.
Really?
No, because asking is morally neutral.
Yeah.
It's just a mechanical transfer of information. You don't suffer because you ask for too much, or because asking makes you weak.
Okay, so where does the suffering come from then?
You suffer because you fundamentally misunderstand the architecture of your own mind.
Yeah.
Every single request you make, no matter how trivial it seems on the surface, it strips away your defenses.
Wow.
Yeah, it exposes what you believe you desperately need to survive. It exposes what you are terrified of losing.
Right.
And it reveals with brutal clarity just how willingly you hand your internal sovereignty over to variables that are entirely outside of your jurisdiction.
That reframes the entire experience for me. Because it's not about the words on the screen or in the air. It's about the vulnerability of exposing our internal attachments.
Precisely.
And that brings us to the mission for today's deep dive into this incredibly fascinating source material, analyzing Seneca's thoughts on the art of asking. We're taking these really robust ancient principles and applying them to the very modern, very everyday act of asking for help.
Which is something you do every single day.
Right. So the goal here is twofold. First, we're going to dissect how to surgically distinguish between a mere preference and a true necessity, which honestly changes the whole chemical reaction in your brain.
Oh, absolutely. It's a game changer.
And second, we are looking at how to master the ultimate psychological superpower, which is accepting rejection, like hearing a hard no without losing your equilibrium.
And to really grasp this, we have to recognize that most of our daily cognitive load is spent waiting, reacting, and sort of silently hoping that reality will simply bend to our expectations.
Yeah, we just cross our fingers.
Right. We want the vendor to agree to the terms. We want our partner to understand our stress. We want the promotion.
And we think if we just get those things, we'll be fine.
Exactly. Instead of training our minds to meet reality with unshakable reason, we just hope the world gets easier to navigate. But Stoic discipline does not begin when you successfully get more of what you want.
Where does it begin?
It begins when you can see clearly what invisible forces are governing your behavior from the inside out.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that means before we can even begin to look at the mechanics of how to ask for help, we really have to take a microscopic look at who is doing the asking.
The inner game.
Right, the inner game. We're looking at the preparation that happens before the words even form in your throat.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at my own behavior right now, and I realize I usually just operate on pure impulse.
Most of us do.
Right. Like I feel a pinch of stress, I realize I need help, and I instantly fire off a Slack message. There is literally zero buffer between the stimulus and the request.
And that lack of a buffer is precisely where the anxiety is born. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because the untrained mind assumes that asking is just a matter of applying the right kind of leverage, or finding some clever linguistic trick to unlock a yes.
Like if I just phrase this perfectly, they can't say no.
Exactly. But the source text makes it unequivocally clear that this approach is entirely backward. The art of asking actually begins in the ordering of your own internal ecosystem.
Meaning what, exactly?
It begins when you learn to decouple your happiness from the favor of other people. The text outlines a strict mandate, which is the pause.
The pause.
The pause. You do not just feel an impulse and instantly blurt out a demand. You have to insert a wedge of consciousness between the desire and the action. And in that wedge, there are three non-negotiable questions you have to answer.
Okay, I love this. Let's break those 3 questions down because this is where the philosophy becomes a highly practical operating system for your day. The first question you have to ask yourself in that pause is this request under my control?
And on the surface, I mean, that sounds obvious, but it's actually kind of a trap, isn't it? Because the outcome is technically never under our control.
That's the trap exactly.
Yeah.
This is rooted deeply in Epictetus's dichotomy of control, which is basically the bedrock of Stoic thought. We constantly ask for outcomes that belong entirely to the universe or to another person's sovereign will.
Like asking someone to like us.
Right. We ask someone to change their fundamental feelings about us, or we ask for a specific financial result in a market with, like, thousands of external variables.
Which is maddening.
It is. So when you ask, is this under my control, and the answer is no, your task isn't to figure out how to ask harder or manipulate better.
You don't double down on the email.
No, you pivot. Your task is to shift your focus immediately to where action is actually possible.
Got it.
You pivot to your own preparation, the clarity of your presentation, the honesty of your work. You do what belongs to you, and you leave the outcome to nature.
So just to put that into a modern corporate context for you listening, I can ask a committee for the opportunity to present my marketing strategy because preparing the pitch and delivering it is within my control.
Correct.
But I cannot ask them to guarantee that I win the budget allocation because that involves their subjective judgment, competing departments, corporate finances, all that stuff.
Exactly.
And if I attach my peace of mind to winning the budget, I've already lost my autonomy before I even walk into the room.
Precisely. You are physically handing them the keys to your emotional regulation. And that transitions smoothly to the second question you must ask in that pause.
Which is?
Is the request just? And the text adds a really heavy caveat here. It says, no advantage is worth corrupting your character.
Man, what does a just request actually look like in an environment that, let's be honest, heavily incentivizes getting ahead by any means necessary?
Well, it requires a pretty harsh interrogation of your own motives. Like, are you asking for a deadline extension because a vendor genuinely failed to deliver a part on time, which is a fair and just representation of reality?
Right.
Or are you asking for the extension because you procrastinated all week and now you want someone else to bend the rules to save you from the consequences of your own laziness?
Ouch. Yeah, that happens a lot.
It does. Or, are you asking for a favor that puts a colleague in a politically compromised position? The Stoic understands that if a request requires you to lie, manipulate, or leverage guilt, it just shouldn't be made.
Because it taints you.
Because if you compromise your character to secure some external advantage, like a little more time or a little more money, you haven't actually won. You've traded away the only asset of true value, which is your integrity, for something totally perishable.
That is a really tough standard to live by.
Yeah.
Because it forces you to take extreme ownership of your circumstances.
Extreme ownership, yeah.
And that leads to the third question, which I think is honestly the ultimate diagnostic test for the ego.
Oh, this one is brutal.
Yeah. Am I prepared to accept no without anger or collapse?
Yes. If you look inward during that tiny pause and realize that a refusal is going to send you into a furious rage or drop you into a spiral of worthlessness.
Which, let's be real, is how a lot of us feel.
Absolutely. But if that's the case, then the verdict is absolute. You are not ready to ask.
Because you're not actually asking.
Exactly. You are not making a request. You are issuing a covert command. You have convinced yourself that reality literally owes you compliance.
Yeah.
The person who asks without self-command, who is just hanging by a thread waiting for a yes, they are already defeated before the conversation even begins.
I really want to push back on this concept of the pause, though.
Sure.
Because sitting in a quiet room, contemplating whether a request is just and under my control, sounds like a lovely luxury for ancient philosophers.
Yeah.
But in the real world, crises happen.
They do.
Like, if I'm managing a logistics team and our primary server crashes and trucks are sitting idle costing thousands of dollars a minute, I desperately need the IT director to drop everything and help.
Right.
I don't have time to walk through a 3-step philosophical checklist. I need action right then.
It's a very valid challenge, and it highlights the natural resistance our nervous systems have to slowing down during a threat response. But we have to redefine what this pause actually is mechanically.
Okay, what is it mechanically?
We aren't talking about lighting incense and meditating for 20 minutes. We are talking about regulating your sympathetic nervous system. It is a micro moment.
So it's like a cognitive circuit breaker.
Exactly. When that server crashes, your amygdala floods your brain with adrenaline. Your natural animal impulse is panic.
Run around screaming.
Right. And if you don't use that micropause to flip the circuit breaker, you just react. You sprint into the IT director's office, you shout, you make demands, you trigger their threat response.
Oh, and then they're mad at you.
Exactly. You alienate the very person whose help you need, and you just escalate the chaos. But if you take literally 1.5 seconds to ask, is my request for help under my control? Yes. Is it just, yes, the company needs this? Am I prepared for him to say he's dealing with a worse security breach and can't help me for 10 minutes? Yes. And if so, I will have to pivot to manual backups.
Wow, so that all happens in a split second.
Yes. That 1 second of cognitive override changes you from a frantic, demanding liability into a rational, effective leader.
That makes it incredibly actionable. It's like stretching before a sprint. It feels like it takes extra time, but it actually prevents you from snapping a hamstring.
That's a great analogy.
It's not about delaying the request. It's about ensuring the request is coming from the prefrontal cortex, not the lizard brain. And to ensure that prefrontal cortex is online when the crisis hits, the source material emphasizes building a daily framework around this.
Yes, the daily routines.
Right. It's not just in-the-moment discipline. It's a lifestyle architecture. They talk about the Stoic morning and evening routines.
Because Stoicism is fundamentally a training regimen. I mean, you cannot expect to lift a heavy weight in an emergency if you haven't been in the gym.
Right.
So the morning routine, which is often called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils, is about setting the baseline. Before you check your email, before the world starts making demands of you, you prepare the mind.
How so?
You explicitly remind yourself that today you will likely need something from someone else. And you deliberately visualize them denying you. You actively imagine the refusal.
That is so counterintuitive to modern self-help, where you're supposed to visualize success. You are intentionally exposing yourself to the negative outcome in a controlled environment.
Exactly.
It's almost like a psychological vaccine. You're giving yourself a deadened strain of the rejection so your immune system can build the antibodies before you actually get out into the world.
That is a perfect biological analogy. You remove the shock value from reality. And most importantly, during this morning visualization, you remind yourself that this anticipated denial is not an injury to your character. It's not a personal attack.
Right. It's just friction in the system. And then the evening routine acts as the audit.
The review process.
Yeah, you review the day's request. What did you seek? How did you frame the question? And what did your mind do with the answer? When they said yes, did you become arrogant and assume it was because of your brilliance?
We all do that.
We do.
Yeah.
Or when they said no, did you act like a toddler denied a toy? Or did you accept it as a rational being processing data?
And the text makes a point here that I found very, very piercing. It insists on writing the truth down during this evening audit.
Yes.
It specifically warns against flattering yourself. The quote is, "Self-examination without honesty is just theater."
Theater.
That word theater really resonates. We are so prone to putting on a play for ourselves, playing the role of the misunderstood hero.
The ego is a master illusionist. We construct these elaborate internal narratives to protect ourselves from our own flaws. We tell ourselves, well, I wasn't angry when the vendor said no. I was just passionately advocating for my company's bottom line.
Oh, I've used that exact excuse.
Right. But no.
Yeah.
You were angry, you were denied a preference, and your heart rate spiked, and you lost your temper.
Yeah.
And until you can strip away that theatrical lighting and look at your behavior with clinical, surgical honesty, neuroplasticity just cannot occur.
Yeah.
You cannot rewire a behavior you refuse to acknowledge.
That's so true.
The person who refuses to conduct an honest evening audit wakes up the exact same person the next morning, doomed to repeat the same panicked reactions.
Which means all this preparation, this pausing and auditing, it all relies on us fundamentally understanding what we are actually asking for.
Right.
If we are analyzing our requests, what is the core criteria we are looking for? Because according to this deep dive into Seneca, the entire game hinges on the ability to distinguish between what we merely prefer to happen and what we actually need to happen.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this distinction is the absolute bedrock of emotional stability. The source text isolates this as the primary engine of modern anxiety.
Confusing the two. Yes, we fundamentally confuse preference with necessity. And this isn't just a philosophical error, it is a linguistic and a biological error.
It's semantic inflation. Just think
Mhm.
about how we use language every single day. We say, I need my boss to approve this proposal. I need this client to sign the contract by Friday.
I need coffee.
Yes. I need my partner to text me back right now. I
Oh.
need to be recognized for the extra hours I put in. We take everyday desires and we just slap the word need onto them.
And we have to understand what happens in the brain when we do that. When you use the word need, you are signaling to your amygdala that your literal survival is at stake.
Wait, really? Just from the word?
Yes. Your nervous system cannot distinguish between I need this client to sign and I need oxygen. You are chemically inducing a survival panic over a corporate contract.
That is terrifying.
It is. If you need approval and someone critiques your work, you don't just feel disappointed. Your biology reacts as though you were being exiled from the tribe, which, in evolutionary terms meant death.
So, if we are stripping away all these inflated desires, what does Stoicism define as a true necessity?
The Stoic answer is radically minimalist. The only true necessity is a good character.
That's it?
That's it. A mind that does not lie to itself. A will that chooses what is right and endures what is not in its power. That is literally it. That is the only thing required to live a good life.
Okay, I have to say, that's a very difficult pill to swallow.
It's tough.
Because if I'm an ambitious person, I want wealth, I want a comfortable home, I want the respect of my peers, I want doors to open for me. Are you saying all of those things are entirely irrelevant?
Well, not irrelevant, but they are categorized entirely differently. The Stoics used a specific term for these things, proogmena, which translates roughly to preferred indifference.
Preferred indifferent. That sounds like an oxymoron. How can something be preferred but also indifferent?
It's actually a brilliant nuance. It means that things like wealth, health, and a good reputation are entirely natural to prefer. Given the choice between health and sickness, a rational person obviously prefers health.
Mhm.
Given the choice between a cooperative colleague and an obstructive one, you prefer the cooperative one.
Naturally.
But they remain indifferent because they are not the source of your moral worth. They do not dictate your ability to be a good human being.
Ah, so it's about the attachment. Like, I can prefer that the investor writes me a check, but the moment I believe that check is a necessity for my identity or my ultimate well-being, I've crossed the line.
Exactly.
I've taken a preferred indifferent and turned it into an idol.
Exactly. And the historical context of Seneca is really crucial here, because Seneca was not a monk living in a cave.
No, not at all.
He was one of the wealthiest men in the Roman Empire. He was a power broker, deeply embedded in the imperial court of Nero. He had immense estates, power, and influence.
He had everything.
He did. And the criticism leveled against him, both in his time and today, is how he could write so beautifully about the irrelevance of wealth while being staggeringly rich.
Right. It seems wildly hypocritical on the surface.
Mhm.
Like, easy for you to say, guy with all the money.
But Seneca's defense, which perfectly illustrates this concept, was that he possessed his wealth, but his wealth did not possess him.
Oh, that's a good.
If the emperor confiscated all his estates tomorrow, which eventually is exactly what happened, Seneca's internal character would remain unchanged. He enjoyed the preferred indifferent while it was present, but he did not need it.
Because when you elevate a preference to the status of a necessity, you begin to demand things from the world that the universe never promised you.
Exactly.
The universe never signed a contract saying everyone will recognize your talent or that every request for help will be met with a smile. And when we demand that it does, we just turn ourselves into professional victims.
I really do.
Every delayed email is a wound. Every refusal is a personal insult.
And this brings us to a deeply insidious psychological trap mentioned in the source material, which is the concept of hidden contracts.
Oh man, I found this part incredibly illuminating because we all do this constantly without realizing it.
Constantly.
A hidden contract is basically when we make a secret deal in our heads. Like, I agree to cover a shift for a coworker, and I secretly draft a contract in my mind that says, because I did this, they now owe me a favor of equal or greater value in the future.
Yes.
Or I put in 60 hours a week on a project, and the hidden contract says, the boss must publicly praise me at the all-hands meeting.
And the defining feature of a hidden contract is that the other party never signed it.
They don't even know it exists.
Exactly. They are just operating on their own trajectory, making their own judgments based on their own priorities.
So when the boss just says, thanks for getting this done, instead of giving me a standing ovation, I feel deeply betrayed. I feel like a contract was breached. But the contract was a complete hallucination.
It is a hallucination that generates immense bitterness. You
Yeah.
offer loyalty, secretly expecting a guarantee of job security. You offer kindness, secretly expecting repayment. When reality breaks your invisible rules, your resentment poisons your environment.
It's toxic.
It is. The disciplined mind, however, operates from principle, not from transactional hallucinations. You do good work because being industrious is part of a good character. You help a colleague because cooperation is just. You do not use your virtues as a currency to secretly purchase a specific outcome from other people.
But doesn't this run the risk of turning us into passive observers?
How so?
Well, if I shouldn't need help and I shouldn't expect repayment and I'm supposed to treat everything as an indifferent, do I just become this detached robot who never pursues anything?
That is the most common misinterpretation of Stoicism. It is not about eradicating desire, it is about purifying it.
Purifying it.
Yes, the Stoic is highly active. They build businesses, they lead armies, they manage households. You are a biological organism designed to seek efficiency. Of course you prefer assistance when overwhelmed.
Right.
The trap isn't the asking. The trap springs the moment you convince yourself that you cannot function without the assistance.
It's the difference between asking with a clenched fist versus an open palm.
Exactly. The text uses the metaphor of palm hands, not desperate fingers.
I love that imagery.
Desperate fingers are white-knuckled, trying to strangle the outcome into submission. Calm hands present the request to reality and gracefully accept whatever is placed back into them.
And how do we actually train those calm hands? Because the source material outlines a fascinating methodology for this, which honestly sounds entirely countercultural today.
Voluntary discomfort.
Yes, voluntary simplicity and discomfort. It argues that to stop needing things, we should intentionally introduce friction into our lives.
Yes, and we can look at the neurobiology of this. We live in an era of unprecedented convenience.
Totally.
You can have hot food delivered to your door in 20 minutes while adjusting the climate control of your house with your voice. When your baseline for comfort is that high, your tolerance for friction is practically zero.
It's so
The moment a Wi-Fi connection drops or a request is denied, your brain registers it as a severe deprivation.
It's like we've pampered our dopamine receptors into severe fragility.
Precisely. So the Stoic intentionally lowers the baseline through voluntary discomfort. You choose to skip a meal, you take a brutally cold shower,
Ugh, the worst.
you walk to work in the rain without an umbrella, you wear your least comfortable clothes for a day.
Or, to apply it directly to asking for help in a professional setting, maybe you intentionally delay asking your mentor for the solution to a problem.
Oh, that's a great example.
You sit with the frustration of the puzzle for another 48 hours.
Sure.
You endure the discomfort of feeling inadequate and stuck, just to prove to your own nervous system that uncertainty isn't fatal.
That is a perfect application. You are providing empirical, undeniable evidence to your own brain that a preference like comfort, immediate answers, warmth is not a necessity. You survive the cold shower. You survive the skipped meal. You survive the confusion of not knowing the answer immediately. And when you eventually walk into the boardroom to ask for funding or approach your partner to ask for a change in behavior, you are exponentially less fragile. You no longer need to manipulate the conversation because you are no longer terrified of the discomfort that comes with a no.
Which provides the perfect logical bridge to how we actually construct the request. So we've done the internal work, we've regulated the nervous system, we've identified the request as a preferred indifferent, we've shredded our hidden contracts, and we've practiced enough discomfort to lower our fragility.
We are ready.
Right.
Right.
Now we have to open our mouths. Let's look at the actual mechanics of the ask, because this mental shift completely transforms the words we choose.
The fundamental premise here is that speech is an action. Careless people treat words as invisible sounds, like harmless exhaust from the brain.
Yeah, just noise.
But words shape the physical reality around you, and more importantly, they are a direct, unedited broadcast of your internal stability. When an untrained mind asks for something, it is operating from a place of scarcity and fear. Therefore, it overcompensates. It speaks too much. It pleads, it rationalizes, it uses volume, or it adopts a frantic emotional cadence, falsely believing that shoe noise will force the other party to comply.
I think we all have a very visceral memory of doing this. The linguistics of insecurity are so obvious when you look for them.
They really are.
Like when I've asked for things out of fear, I just ramble. I give a 5-minute preamble. I apologize incessantly. I try to make the favor sound incredibly minor while simultaneously hinting that my life will fall apart if they don't do it.
It's exhausting for everyone.
It is. The source text actually categorizes these behaviors into 3 specific traps of weak request. Let's dissect them. Trap number 1 is manipulative softness.
Manipulative softness is a covert operation.
A covert operation.
Yeah, it's when you dress your request in a cloak of victimhood to bypass the other person's rational decision-making and target their guilt. You sigh heavily in their presence. You talk endlessly about how overwhelmed and tired you are, never actually asking for help, but hoping they will feel sufficiently uncomfortable to volunteer and take the burden off you.
It's weaponized helplessness.
Yes.
It's cowardly because you want the benefit of the yes without risking the vulnerability of actually making a direct request.
Exactly. It stems from a profound distrust of reason. You don't trust that your request is logically sound enough to stand on its own, so you try to emotionally extort the other person.
Yikes. Okay, trap number 2 is the polar opposite. Threatening pressure.
This is brute force. You rely on hierarchy, authority, or the implication of negative consequences. You don't ask, you demand.
Like a boss just dropping something on your desk.
Right. And a demand is fundamentally arrogant because it refuses to acknowledge that the other person is a sovereign, rational being with their own agency. It attempts to overwrite their free will with your preference.
And then trap number 3 is emotional loudness. Agitation. Pacing. Giving away all your power by showing how deeply uncentered you are by the need.
Desperation, basically.
Right, so knowing the traps, what is the alternative? How does the philosophy dictate we construct the physical request?
It dictates calm, straight speech. Your words should be few, crystal clear, and uncompromisingly honest.
Just say what you mean.
Yes. You state the reality of the situation, you state what action would be helpful, and you stop talking. You do not try to bend their perception of reality with exaggeration. Calm speech carries a massive amount of weight, precisely because it communicates self-governance.
The source has this incredible phrase here. Straight speech is a form of moral courage.
It really is.
When you think about it, speaking plainly without manipulation or veiled threats requires massive guts. By asking directly, like, I'm struggling with this data set, do you have an hour to help me?
Yeah.
You are leaving wide open space for them to say, no, I don't.
Exactly.
You aren't trapping them, you are handing them their agency, which means you have to be strong enough to accept their choice.
It is the ultimate display of internal freedom. A person who cannot bear refusal is essentially a slave to the outcome, which forces them to use tricks and coercion. But the disciplined mind tells the truth and respects the humanity of the person they are addressing.
You treat them like a person.
Right. You recognize they are also burdened by their own duties and concerns. You do not view them merely as an instrument designed to facilitate your ease.
It almost sounds like getting the yes is secondary. The primary objective is to maintain your own integrity during the interaction.
Exactly.
But there's a fascinating caveat here that really caught my attention. Here's where it gets really interesting. The text insists that you only have the right to ask for what is deserved, and only after you have proven yourself through action.
Yes. Yes.
A Stoic does not ask as a beggar who wants gifts from life while remaining unchanged.
This is a critical check against entitlement. And we see this constantly in modern environments. People ask for outcomes they have not earned the right to request.
Oh, all the time.
They want the trust of their team, but they consistently miss deadlines. They want the promotion and the title, but they haven't demonstrated any capacity for leadership. They want the harvest, but they refuse to plow the field.
It's the audacity of asking someone to believe you're a master chef when you've never even turned on a stove in their presence.
Right.
You have to lay the foundation first. A Stoic doesn't ask for a handout. They ask from a platform of established character.
This touches on the core of Seneca's views on persuasion. When we think of persuasion today, we think of psychological tactics, NLP, mirrored body language, and tricks to hack the other person's brain.
Right, life hacks.
But true Stoic persuasion relies on ethos, the character of the speaker. You cannot control another person's thoughts. The only true influence you possess is the weight of your own track record.
That makes total sense.
When your request is backed by a history of reliability, honesty, and hard work, your words aren't polluted by manipulation. They have gravity.
Hmm.
People intuitively sense the difference between a parasite seeking an unearned advantage and a contributor seeking a rational partnership.
And because you don't need it, they feel that too.
Paradoxically, yes, because you don't need their agreement to survive, you exude a calm that makes people vastly more inclined to trust you.
All right, so let's follow the timeline. We've regulated our nervous system. We've recognized it's a preferred indifferent. We've spoken with clear, calm, straight speech, backed by our earned character. We did everything right.
Perfect execution.
And yet, the person looks at us and says, no.
It happens.
The door slams shut. How do we prevent our minds from spontaneously combusting? This is where the philosophy really has to prove its worth. How do we accept rejection without losing our peace?
The very first cognitive intervention you must make is delinking your identity from the outcome. This is where most people fail instantly. When someone says no, your untrained brain does not simply record a logistical refusal. It instantly authors a tragedy. It engages in a cognitive distortion called personalization.
Oh, wow. We take a simple binary outcome and we weaponize it against our own ego.
Every time.
Like I ask a friend if they want to collaborate on a project. They say they don't have the bandwidth. My brain immediately spins up a narrative. They said no because my ideas are terrible. They said no because they don't respect me. They said no because I am fundamentally inadequate.
Exactly. You suffer immensely, but you are not suffering from the event itself. You are suffering from your own catastrophic interpretation of the event.
So what's the fix?
The Stoic intervenes at the point of interpretation. You must reframe the refusal entirely. A no is not an indictment of your existence. It is not an insult to your soul. It is simply data.
Pure information.
Pure information. It is a data point telling you what is practically possible in that specific moment, given the infinite variables at play in that other person's life.
Right, because they have their own stuff going on.
Exactly. Their stress, their budget, their timeline, their own hidden fears. It tells you what door is closed, which immediately clarifies what must now be done. A wise person takes a refusal and turns it into navigational data. A foolish person takes a refusal and turns it into a humiliation.
There's a quote from the text that serves as an anchor for this mindset, and it's brilliant. I will ask well, but I do not own the answer. That is the law of inner freedom.
It is the ultimate boundary line. I will ask well. That encapsulates my duty, my preparation, my moral courage, my straight speech. All of that is my property.
Right.
But I do not own the answer. That property belongs to the other person and the circumstances of the universe.
If we really dig into why we fear rejection so profoundly, it always comes back to this delusion that the external world dictates our value.
Yes.
We just outsource our self-worth. If they say yes, we feel validated and powerful. If they say no, we feel completely worthless.
And if you live that way, you are not a sovereign individual. You are a puppet, and every person you meet holds a string.
That's a scary image.
But it's true. If you receive a no and collapse into despair, you're a slave to their judgment. But importantly, if you receive a yes and become puffed up with arrogance, thinking you are invincible, you are equally a slave.
Oh.
You are just a slave who happens to be enjoying the current weather. Real strength, true psychological sovereignty, is receiving either answer with a perfectly steady pulse, knowing that your character remains untouched by the shifting winds of other people's opinions.
I want to explore a specific variation of this that I think is actually harder to deal with than a hard rejection.
Okay, what is it?
What happens when the answer isn't yes and it isn't no? What happens when it's just silence? You make the request and they say, let me think about it. Or worse, you send the email and you just get left on red for 2 weeks. The psychological tyranny of delayed answers is agonizing. The uncertainty just eats you alive.
It is agonizing because it triggers our deepest intolerance for ambiguity. Demanding instant certainty comes from that same terrified, controlling ego. We want the answer right now, even if it's a no, just so we can feel secure and establish a plan.
Right, just put me out of my misery.
Exactly. We operate under the delusion that immediate resolution is always superior to waiting.
And when we can't stand the ambiguity, we start sabotaging ourselves. This is when the impatient follow-up emails start happening. Hey, just bubbling this up to the top of your inbox.
The worst.
We pester, we chase, we degrade our own dignity by repeating a request that has already been clearly understood. We trade our character for the illusion of control.
The source text offers a sharp rebuke to this behavior. It says, one clean request is often stronger than 10 anxious ones.
Wow.
Patience, in the Stoic framework, is not merely passive waiting. It is not sitting around idly while life passes you by. Patience is an active discipline. It is the intense, focused effort of remaining guided by reason while time introduces itself as a variable.
Time is a variable. I really love that. You wouldn't yell at a cake in the oven for taking 40 minutes to bake. It requires time.
Exactly. If the answer is delayed, your duty is to remain steady. You do not attempt to force an outcome that requires the maturation of time. You recognize the boundary, you have done your part, the request is lodged in reality, and now the pacing belongs to circumstance.
So what do you do in the meantime?
You immediately return your attention to the present moment. You ask yourself, what is my duty right now? And your duty is almost never to sit by the phone holding your breath. Your duty is to return to your work, care for your family, and continue living well.
So we've made the request. The answer is yes or no, or maybe later. But regardless of the outcome of that specific transaction, the clock keeps ticking. Our life doesn't pause.
No, it doesn't.
And that brings us to the final evolution of this process, transforming the request into Stoic action, because there's a massive trap lying in wait right after you make a request.
Yes. It is the trap of passive wishing. A significant portion of humanity lives their entire lives trapped in the space between making a request and waiting for deliverance.
Waiting to be saved.
Right. They ask the world to change, they complain when it doesn't, and they mistakenly believe that expressing a strong desire is the equivalent of taking action.
We see this everywhere. Someone says, I wish my partner would communicate better. And they ask them to change, but they do absolutely nothing to improve their own listening skills.
Exactly.
Or they ask the universe for a better job, but they don't spend a single weekend upgrading their resume or learning a new skill.
Yeah.
We ask the universe to solve the equation for us, and we sit back on the couch waiting for the delivery.
And this raises an important question. The text demands a radical pivot here. It asks, what action must you take now, regardless of whether the request is ultimately granted or denied? A request is merely a vocalized intent. It has zero kinetic power unless it is followed by conduct. Reality is entirely indifferent to your passive desires. It only responds to disciplined, sustained behavior.
Action is the antidote to the anxiety of waiting. The source gives incredibly practical examples of closing this gap between wishing and doing.
It does.
Like, if you are asking your team for more trust, you cannot just say, trust me. The action is, are you behaving in a meticulously trustworthy manner right now? If you are asking for an opportunity to lead a project, have you spent your mornings setting the logistics of that project so you are ready if the door opens?
You must convert the external request into an internal action plan. You stop waiting for external conditions to perfectly align before you begin living correctly.
Right.
If you desire respect, act with unshakable integrity today. If you desire clarity from others, examine and clarify your own thoughts today. You do not control whether they grant your request, but you have absolute control over your participation in the process.
Let's apply this to the rejection scenario. If I ask my executive team for an increased budget to hire more staff, and they say, no, the budget is frozen for the next 2 quarters.
Okay, a hard no.
Right. The untrained response is to throw my hands up, play the victim, and say, well, the department is doomed. It's their fault. I asked, and they said no.
Yeah.
But the Stoic transforms that refusal into immediate action.
Yes.
So how do you respond? I have to ask, what can I do with the resources I do possess? How can I optimize our current workflows? Can we eliminate redundant tasks? How can I become a more efficient leader right now within these constraints? I don't let the no paralyze me. I turn it into the parameters of my next action.
And in doing so, you arrive at the grand synthesis of this entire philosophy. This is the profound realization that ties everything together. The true ultimate purpose of every request you make in your life is not merely to obtain the external object you are asking for.
It almost sounds like getting a yes is just a byproduct. The real objective of the request is the stress test it provides to your own character.
Exactly. The deepest purpose of every desire, every request, every uncertain outcome is to reveal and train the character of the person making it. Every time you ask for help, you are stepping into a training ground. It is an opportunity to practice your patience when they delay, your humility when you realize you cannot do it alone, your courage when you speak plainly, and your resilience when they refuse you.
Tola test.
If you convert your requests into actions, you stop waiting for the world to complete you. You measure your success not by the favors you extract from the universe, but by the dignity, reason, and strength you exhibit while you are seeking them.
That flips the entire paradigm. It's never about the answer you get. It's entirely about the person you become while you were waiting for it.
That is the Stoic way.
If we trace the arc of what we've uncovered today, the path to mastering the art of asking for help is rigorous, but it's incredibly liberating.
Very
It
liberating.
starts by intercepting your own nervous system, pausing before you speak.
Mm.
And in that pause, you examine your motives. You rigorously analyze whether you are dealing with a true necessity or just a preferred indifferent, which lowers the biological stakes of the interaction.
Right.
You burn your hidden contracts. You speak with the calm, clear courage of someone who relies on their earned character, not manipulation. When the answer arrives, you strip away the personalization, treating a no as pure logistical data, not an insult to your soul, and regardless of the outcome, you immediately follow your words with disciplined action.
It is a demanding operating system. It requires real vigilance against the ego's constant desire to play the victim. But as the text and history prove, it is the only methodology that leaves your autonomy intact.
You become anti-fragile.
Exactly. The world cannot easily break a person who does not depend on its constant fluctuating approval.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought today, a practical challenge to just mull over. Think about something you are currently waiting on, an email, a favor, an opportunity you've asked for. Now, I want you to imagine that I have a crystal ball, and I can tell you with 100% certainty that their answer is going to be a hard, definitive no.
A total rejection.
Exactly. If you knew that to be a fact right now, how would that change the way you spend the next hour of your life? What alternative action would you have to take? What work would you have to do on your own? And the ultimate question is, why aren't you just doing that right now? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of the mind. Go out there, face the uncertainty, and practice the Stoic art of asking today.